The rain fell steadily on the black umbrellas gathered around the grave. Marcus stood beside his sister Elena, watching as their Uncle Theodore's casket was lowered into the ground. The small crowd of mourners stood silent, their faces solemn and appropriate for the occasion. Theodore Blackwood had been a wealthy man, a collector of rare artifacts and keeper of family secrets. His death at 82 had been expected, but the reading of his will was still 3 days away. Marcus noticed it first. As the priest spoke the final prayers, Elena's lips curved into the slightest smile. It was barely there, like a shadow passing over her face. But Marcus saw it. His sister, who had been crying just moments before, was now fighting to hide something that looked dangerously close to satisfaction. He glanced around to see if anyone else had noticed. Their cousins stood rigid in their expensive black coats. Aunt Margaret dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. The family lawyer, Mr. Cromwell, checked his watch discreetly. No one seemed to have seen Elena's strange expression, except Marcus. The smile vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Elena's face returned to its mask of grief, but Marcus couldn't shake what he had witnessed. In 35 years, he had never seen his sister smile at a funeral. Something was terribly wrong. After the service, the family gathered at Theodore's mansion for the traditional reception. The old house felt different without its master. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked louder than Marcus remembered. The portraits on the walls seemed to watch the guests with knowing eyes. Marcus found Elena in Theodore's study, running her fingers along the spines of leather-bound books. She jumped when he entered. "You startled me," she said, pressing a hand to her chest. "What was that about?" Marcus asked, closing the door behind him. "What was what about?" "The smile, during the service. I saw you smile, Elena." His sister's face went pale. "You're imagining things. It's been a difficult day." "Don't lie to me. We've been through too much together for that." Elena turned away, walking to the window that overlooked the garden. The rain had stopped, leaving everything gleaming and wet. "You wouldn't understand," she said quietly. "Try me." She was silent for so long that Marcus thought she wouldn't answer. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you remember the summer when I was 15? When I stayed here with Uncle Theodore for 3 months?" Marcus nodded. He had been away at college that summer. Elena had been sent to stay with their uncle after getting into trouble at school. Their parents had hoped Theodore's strict discipline would straighten her out. "Something happened that summer," Elena continued. "Something I've never told anyone." "What kind of something?" Elena shook her head. "I can't. Not yet. But when the will is read, you'll understand everything." Before Marcus could press her further, the door burst open. Their cousin Richard stood there, his face flushed with alcohol and anger. "There you are," Richard said, pointing at Elena. "I should have known I'd find you here, going through his things already." "I'm not going through anything," Elena said calmly. "I'm simply remembering our uncle." Richard laughed bitterly. "Right. We all know you were his favorite, always visiting, always flattering the old man. Well, whatever you think you're getting in that will, you're in for a surprise." "Richard, please," Marcus said. "This isn't the time." "Oh, it's exactly the time," Richard slurred. "You think I don't know what's been going on? The secret meetings? The private dinners? Elena's been playing a long game, and we all know it." Elena's face remained composed, but Marcus saw her hands clench into fists. "You're drunk, Richard. Go sleep it off." "Maybe I am drunk," Richard said, swaying slightly. "But at least I'm not a liar and a—" "That's enough," Marcus said firmly, stepping between them. "Richard, go back to the reception. We'll discuss whatever issues you have after the will is read." Richard glared at them both, then stumbled out of the room, muttering curses under his breath. When he was gone, Marcus turned to his sister. "What did he mean about secret meetings?" Elena sighed. "Richard is paranoid. He thinks everyone is scheming for Uncle Theodore's money. But you did visit Theodore often. He was lonely, Elena said. His own children barely spoke to him. I felt sorry for him. Marcus studied his sister's face. They had always been close, but now he felt like he was looking at a stranger. Elena, whatever happened that summer, whatever secrets you're keeping, I'm your brother. You can trust me. Elena's eyes filled with tears. Can I? Can I really trust anyone in this family? Before Marcus could answer, she pushed past him and left the room. He stood alone in Theodore's study, surrounded by the artifacts and books their uncle had spent a lifetime collecting. Somewhere in this room, among these possessions, was a secret that had made his sister smile at a funeral. Marcus walked to Theodore's desk and sat in the leather chair. The desktop was clean except for a silver letter opener and a photograph in an ornate frame. He picked up the photograph and studied it. It showed Theodore as a younger man, standing in front of the mansion with a group of people Marcus didn't recognize. But there, in the corner of the photo, was a young girl who looked remarkably like Elena. The door opened again, and Mr. Cromwell entered. The lawyer looked tired and eager to leave. Mr. Blackwood, Cromwell said, I was looking for you. I wanted to confirm that you and your sister will be present for the reading of the will on Thursday. We'll be there, Marcus said, setting down the photograph. Cromwell hesitated. Your uncle left very specific instructions. All beneficiaries must be present, or they forfeit their inheritance. All beneficiaries? How many are there? I'm not at liberty to say, but I can tell you that your uncle's will is unusual. He insisted on certain conditions that must be met. What kind of conditions? Cromwell adjusted his glasses nervously. You'll learn everything on Thursday. But I feel I should warn you, Mr. Blackwood. Your uncle included information in his will that may be disturbing to some family members. He insisted that certain truths be revealed. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Truths about what? I've said too much already. Thursday, Mr. Blackwood, 2 o'clock sharp. Don't be late. The lawyer left quickly, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts. He looked again at the photograph on the desk, at the young girl who might or might not be Elena. Whatever had happened that summer long ago, whatever secret had made his sister smile at their uncle's funeral, would be revealed in 3 days. Marcus left the study and returned to the reception. He found Elena standing alone by the fireplace, staring into the flames. The other guests gave her a wide berth, as if they could sense the tension radiating from her. Elena, he said softly. She didn't turn around. He wasn't who you think he was, Marcus. None of them are. What do you mean? This family, these people. They're all wearing masks, playing roles. Uncle Theodore was the worst of them, but at least he admitted it in the end. Admitted what? Elena finally looked at him, and Marcus was shocked to see not sadness in her eyes, but triumph. That's why I smiled, Marcus, because after 20 years, the truth is finally going to come out. And when it does, this family will never be the same. She walked away, leaving Marcus by the fire. Around him, the reception continued, the mourners eating and drinking and sharing memories of Theodore Blackwood. But Marcus could only think about his sister's words and the smile he had seen at the graveside. 3 days until the will was read. 3 days until the truth, whatever it was, would be revealed. Marcus poured himself a drink and settled in to wait, knowing that his sister's smile at the funeral was only the beginning of something much larger and more dangerous than he could imagine. The 3 days passed slowly for Marcus. He tried calling Elena several times, but she didn't answer. Her apartment in the city stood empty when he went to check on her. The doorman said she had left with a suitcase the morning after the funeral, destination unknown. Marcus spent his time researching, visiting the public library to look through old newspapers from the summer Elena had stayed with Theodore. He found nothing unusual, just society pages showing Theodore at various charity events. But then, in a small article near the back of one paper, he found something interesting. A young woman had disappeared that summer, a servant who worked at Theodore's mansion. She was never found. On Thursday morning, Marcus arrived at Theodore's mansion early. The house felt even more oppressive than it had during the reception. The servants had been given the day off, and the silence was complete except for the ticking of clocks throughout the house. He found Elena in the conservatory, sitting among the exotic plants Theodore had collected from around the world. She wore a black dress, but her face showed no signs of grief. "Where have you been?" Marcus asked. "Getting my affairs in order," Elena replied. "After today, I may need to leave quickly." "Leave? Why would you need to leave?" Elena smiled, the same mysterious smile from the funeral. "You'll understand soon enough." Other family members began arriving. Richard came with his wife, both looking hungover and angry. Aunt Margaret arrived with her son James, a weak-chinned man who had always lived in his mother's shadow. Several distant cousins Marcus barely knew filed in, their eyes gleaming with greed. Mr. Cromwell arrived precisely at 2 o'clock, carrying a leather briefcase that looked as old as Theodore himself. He led them all to the formal dining room, where chairs had been arranged facing the head of the table. "Before we begin," Cromwell said, adjusting his spectacles, "I must remind you all that Theodore Blackwood's will contains several unusual provisions. He insisted that everything be read exactly as written, no matter how uncomfortable it might make some of you." Richard snorted. "Just get on with it. Tell us who gets what." Cromwell opened his briefcase and removed a thick envelope sealed with red wax. He broke the seal carefully and unfolded the papers inside. "I, Theodore Marcus Blackwood, being of sound mind and body, do hereby make this my last will and testament," Cromwell read. "But before I distribute my worldly possessions, I have truths to reveal, truths that have been hidden for too long." The room grew tense. Elena leaned forward slightly, her hands folded in her lap. "First," Cromwell continued, "to my nephew Richard Blackwood, I leave the sum of $1 and the knowledge that I have been aware of your embezzlement from the family company for the past 5 years. Evidence of your crimes has been forwarded to the authorities and will be acted upon 1 week after my death." Richard jumped to his feet. "That's a lie! I never—" "Sit down," Cromwell said sharply, "or you will be removed from the reading and forfeit even your $1. Richard sank back into his chair, his face ashen. His wife stared at him in horror. "To my sister Margaret," Cromwell read on, "I leave my collection of jewelry, with the exception of the emerald necklace, and the truth that her son James is not the child of her late husband, but of my business partner, Harold Worthington, with whom she had an affair for 7 years. Margaret gasped. James looked at his mother in shock. "Mother, is this true?" Margaret's face had gone white. "How could he know? How could he possibly—" "Uncle Theodore knew everything," Elena said quietly. "He made it his business to know." Cromwell cleared his throat and continued. "To the various cousins and distant relations gathered here, I leave modest sums as detailed in the appendix. But know that I have documented all of your secrets as well. The affairs, the debts, the lies you've told. These documents will remain sealed unless any of you contest this will." The room erupted in angry voices. Cromwell had to shout to restore order. When quiet finally returned, he turned to a new page. "Now, to the matter of my nephew Marcus and my niece Elena Blackwood." Marcus felt his heart racing. Beside him, Elena sat perfectly still. 20 years ago," Cromwell read, "Elena came to stay with me for a summer. During that time, she discovered something that changed both our lives forever. She found the body of Mary Patterson, the servant who had supposedly run away, buried in my garden." The room fell completely silent. Marcus stared at his sister, who continued to look straight ahead. "Elena confronted me," Cromwell continued reading. I expected her to go to the police. Instead, this remarkable young woman, only 15 years old, proposed a bargain. She would keep my secret if I would help her with her own plans. You see, Elena had already decided that she would one day take revenge on this family for the way they had treated her mother, my sister Catherine. Marcus's mind reeled. Their mother had died when Elena was 13, supposedly of a heart condition. Catherine did not die of natural causes, Cromwell read. She was slowly poisoned by her husband, Marcus, and Elena's father, who wanted to marry his mistress. I knew this, but did nothing to stop it, to my eternal shame. Elena discovered the truth and came to me that summer, not by accident, but by design. Marcus turned to Elena. Is this true? Did father... Elena nodded. I found Mother's diary. She knew what was happening to her, but was too weak to fight. The family doctor was paid off. Everyone who should have protected her looked the other way. Cromwell continued reading. For 20 years, Elena and I have worked together. She helped me maintain my reputation while gathering evidence against those who had wronged her mother. In return, I protected her and promised that upon my death the truth would be revealed. This is insane, Richard shouted. You can't prove any of this. The proof, Cromwell said, is in the vault beneath this house. Theodore kept meticulous records of everything, every crime, every cover-up, every payoff. It's all there. To Marcus, Cromwell read, who alone in this family showed genuine kindness to both Catherine and Elena, I leave half of my estate, with the hope that he will use it wisely and justly. To Elena, my co-conspirator and the daughter I never had, I leave the other half of my estate and all my collections with one condition. Elena finally moved, turning to look at Marcus. The condition, Cromwell read, is that Elena must finally tell the full truth about Mary Patterson's death. You see, I did not kill her, though I buried her body and took the blame in this letter to protect the real killer. Mary Patterson was killed by Elena's father when she threatened to expose his poisoning of Catherine. Elena found the body that summer and used it to ensure my cooperation, knowing I would fear the scandal more than death itself. The room exploded into chaos. Richard was screaming about lawyers and lies. Margaret had fainted. The cousins were all talking at once. But Marcus only had eyes for his sister. You knew, he said. All this time, you knew father was a murderer. Elena's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I knew. And I waited. And now, finally, justice will be done. The police have already been notified. They're waiting outside. Through the window, Marcus could see police cars pulling up to the mansion. Officers were getting out, preparing to enter. Theodore's final gift, Elena said, standing. He kept evidence of father's crimes, too. Where father is, wherever he's hiding with his new family, they'll find him now. She walked to Marcus and took his hands. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but you were the only good one, Marcus. The only one who deserved to be saved. And what about you? Marcus asked. What happens to you now? Elena smiled, that same mysterious smile from the funeral. I'm free. For the first time in 20 years, I'm finally free. The police entered the room and the arrests began. The aftermath of the will reading was swift and brutal. Richard was arrested on embezzlement charges before he could leave the mansion. Margaret collapsed and had to be taken to the hospital, where she remained under police guard while they investigated her role in covering up various family crimes. The cousins scattered like rats from a sinking ship, some trying to flee the country before their own secrets could be exposed. Marcus stood in the conservatory with Elena as the police conducted their investigation. The house had been sealed as a crime scene, but Detective Morrison had allowed them to remain, recognizing they were witnesses rather than suspects. Your father was picked up an hour ago, Morrison told them. He was living under an assumed name in Arizona. His second wife had no idea who he really was. Elena nodded. She showed no satisfaction, no joy, just a weary relief. What happens now? Theodore Blackwood's documentation is extensive, Morrison said. It will take months to go through it all. But from what we've seen, he recorded everything. Conversations, transactions, even photographs. Your father's conviction seems certain. After Morrison left them alone, Marcus and Elena walked through the mansion one last time. The house would be sold, the collections dispersed to museums. Too much darkness had lived within these walls. "Why didn't you tell me?" Marcus asked as they stood in Theodore's study. "Would you have believed me?" Elena replied. "That our father was a murderer? That the entire family was corrupt? You always saw the best in people, Marcus. It's what saved you, but it also made you blind." Marcus couldn't argue. He thought of all the family gatherings, all the times he'd defended their father, excused their relatives' behavior. The signs had been there, but he'd chosen not to see them. "The smile at the funeral," he said. "You were smiling because you knew it was finally over." 20 years of planning, Elena said. 20 years of pretending, of gathering evidence, of waiting for Theodore to die. He could have exposed them all years ago, but he was too afraid of being implicated himself. It was only when he knew he was dying that he agreed to my plan. And Mary Patterson? She really discovered what father was doing? Elena walked to the window, looking out at the garden where the poor woman had been buried. She was Mother's friend. When Mother got sick, Mary was the only one who questioned it. She confronted father, threatened to go to the police, so he killed her. Theodore helped cover it up because father had information about his own shady dealings. It was all connected, Marcus. A web of blackmail and murder. How did you live with it? Knowing all this and saying nothing? Elena turned to face him, and for the first time, he saw the weight of what she had carried. Every day was agony. But I had to be patient. I had to gather enough evidence to bring them all down, not just father. The whole rotten system that allowed Mother to be murdered. They left the study and walked through the portrait gallery. Generations of Blackwoods stared down at them from gilded frames. Marcus wondered how many of them had been criminals. How many secrets had been buried with them. "What will you do now?" he asked. "Travel," Elena said. "See the world. Try to remember who I was before that summer, before I discovered the truth. What about you?" Marcus considered. Half of Theodore's fortune was more money than he could ever spend. "I think I'll start a foundation. Something in Mother's memory. Something to help women in danger." Elena smiled. A real smile this time, warm and genuine. She would have liked that. They were interrupted by Mr. Cromwell, who appeared looking exhausted but satisfied. "The police have finished with me for now. I've been asked to inform you that the estate can begin probate proceedings once the criminal investigations are complete. It may take some time." "We're in no hurry," Elena said. Cromwell hesitated. "There's one more thing. Theodore left a personal letter for each of you. He asked that I deliver them after the will was read." He handed them each an envelope. Marcus opened his immediately. "Dear Marcus," he read silently, "if you are reading this, then the truth has been revealed. I owe you an apology. You were an innocent in a family of serpents, and I did nothing to protect you or your mother. I hope the money I leave you can in some small way make amends for my cowardice. Your sister is stronger than both of us. She saw what needed to be done and did it. Take care of her if she'll let you. She's earned her freedom, but the cost was high. Your uncle, Theodore." Marcus looked up to see Elena folding her own letter and putting it in her pocket. "What did he say to you?" he asked. "That's between Theodore and me," she said softly. "Some secrets are worth keeping." As the sun set over the mansion, the siblings stood together in the gathering darkness. Tomorrow the news would break. The Blackwood family scandal would be splashed across every newspaper. Their name would become synonymous with murder and corruption. "Are you ready for what comes next?" Elena asked. "The media attention, the trial, the complete destruction of our family name?" All of it. Marcus thought about it. Everything he had believed about his family was a lie. But Elena was still his sister. Their mother had still loved them. There was still good to be done in the world. "I'm ready," he said. They walked out of the mansion together, leaving the portraits and secrets behind. Police tape already marked the entrances. By morning, forensic teams would be combing through the garden, looking for more bodies. The Blackwood legacy would be one of shame and horror. But as they reached Marcus's car, Elena stopped and looked back one last time. "Do you regret it?" Marcus asked. "Everything you gave up for revenge?" Elena considered the question. "I gave up my childhood, my innocence, any chance at a normal life. I became something I never wanted to be, a keeper of secrets, a player of long games. But if I hadn't, Father would still be free. Mother's death would have gone unavenged. Sometimes, Marcus, someone has to be willing to walk in the darkness to bring others to the light. You could have just gone to the police when you found out. With what proof? A teenage girl's word against a respected businessman? They would have buried me like they buried Mary Patterson. No, it had to be done this way." Theodore's reputation was the key. His meticulous record-keeping, his paranoia about being exposed. I turned his weapons against them all. They got in the car and drove away from the mansion. In the rearview mirror, Marcus watched the house grow smaller until it disappeared entirely. 3 months later, Marcus stood in a courtroom as his father was sentenced to life in prison for the murders of Catherine Blackwood and Mary Patterson. Richard received 10 years for embezzlement. Other family members faced various charges. The Blackwood fortune, built on generations of crime, was largely seized by the government, though Marcus and Elena's inheritance remained intact. Elena wasn't there for the sentencing. She had left for Thailand the week before, sending Marcus postcards from various temples and beaches. Her messages were brief but warm. She was learning to paint. She had taken up meditation. She was finally learning to sleep without nightmares. Marcus used his inheritance to establish the Catherine Blackwood Foundation for Domestic Violence Prevention. He hired good people, people who had no connection to his family's dark past. Slowly, he began to rebuild the Blackwood name, not as something to be feared, but as something that could help. On the first anniversary of Theodore's funeral, Marcus received a package from Elena. Inside was a painting, a woman standing in a garden, her face turned toward the sun, smiling. The woman looked like their mother, but younger, happier. A note was attached. "This is how I choose to remember her. This is why I smiled at the funeral, not because Theodore was dead, but because Mother was finally free." We all are. Marcus hung the painting in his office at the foundation. When people asked about it, he would tell them it was his mother, painted by his sister. He didn't tell them about the funeral or the smile or the 20 years of secrets that had led to their freedom. Some stories were too dark for casual conversation. But late at night, when he was alone, Marcus would look at the painting and understand. Elena's smile at the funeral hadn't been about victory or revenge. It had been about release, the end of a long vigil, the chance to finally live without the weight of terrible knowledge. The Blackwood mansion was eventually demolished. The land was turned into a public park. Where Theodore's garden once held dark secrets, children now played on swings and families picnicked in the sun. It was, Marcus thought, what their mother would have wanted: beauty from ashes, light from darkness, truth, no matter how painful, finally setting them free.